It seems like there are often two fundamental responses to crisis or failure. Either you take in the new data and adjust course, or you double down and just keep digging yourself deeper. We've seen Cardano adjust course like this multiple times, but today it looks like a very prominent device manufacturer is definitely choosing the dig themselves deeper path. Ready? Let's go. Today, we're going to discuss the launch of the Cardano Foundation's stake pool operator poll on the K and min pool cost parameters, Ledger seemingly just digging themselves into a deeper hole on their recovery feature, and some beautiful new in-game footage from a Cardano metaverse project. If you've ever actually had to dig a hole like this and you weren't hiding a corpse, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. The Cardano Foundation stake pool operator poll finally launched today. So we thought it was going to launch on Monday, but it actually launched today, and pools are already voting. So just as a reminder, what is this? This is not a binding vote in any way. This is just a poll. The Cardano Foundation is trying to get the data about what the stake pool operators think. But this also involves you delegators, because the way this is going to work for the next 17 days and 17 hours, according to AdaStat here, the SPOs are going to vote in this poll. Then on May 25th, phase 2 will start. This will be the phase for you delegators to look at how your pool voted and redelegate if you disagree with them. So what are they voting on? These two parameters involved in Cardano staking. One is the K parameter. The K parameter is all about the number of fully saturated pools we can accommodate on chain. So K is currently set to 500. And of course, if we're talking about the number of fully saturated pools we can accommodate on chain, this also, as a secondary effect, determines the saturation threshold. Not even a secondary effect. It does determine the saturation threshold. So the proposal is to move K from 500 to 1,000. This would cut the saturation threshold in half. So the saturation threshold, of course, is constantly changing because we're constantly issuing ADA in the form of block rewards. The rewards you get as a Cardano delegator are the issuance of new ADA. So we're constantly issuing more ADA. So the saturation threshold is constantly going up. But at K equals 1,000, we would cut that saturation threshold in half. So I don't know what the saturation threshold will be if we ever do move to K equals 1,000. Sounds like maybe in Q3. So this poll is all about changing these parameters possibly in Q3. So in Q3, if we change the parameters, it'll cut whatever the current saturation level is in half. Currently, we have pools up in the 70 million region that are pretty close. I think it might be between 70 and 71 million right now. That's the current saturation threshold. So currently, if we cut it in half, we'd be talking about somewhere in the ballpark of 35 million. That's relevant because you'll find the way pools voted, a lot of pools seem to have voted altruistically. They seem to be voting in favor of things they think are good for the decentralization of the Cardano blockchain. There are other pools, of course, because we're human beings. These stake pool operators are human beings. So, of course, there's going to be a certain percentage of them that will vote in favor of their pocketbooks, their own economic interests, no matter what. No matter what, even if we were suffering some kind of horrible, severe, tragic tragedy of the commons, even if we were experiencing a huge tragedy of the commons that meant the death of the blockchain, there would probably still be SPOs who would vote in their own economic best interest, even if that only existed for another day or so. Humans just do it. Humans vote in some percentage of humans will always vote in favor of whatever gives them the most money, even if it's totally a short-sighted, short-term strategy, and they would have made more money over the long term by voting for something that didn't exploit the commons. So we see that, of course, in this poll. And it sort of does depend, because I mean, there are people who make different arguments for decentralization. You could certainly have different views about whether 170 ADA, 0 ADA, or 340 ADA min pool cost promotes decentralization more. I've heard people make arguments about each of these levels, and I believe that some of these people actually believe that what they're arguing is in favor of decentralization. Everybody has to come to their own decision. Do you think K equals 500 is better? Do you think K equals 1,000 is better? Do you think min pool cost should be 0, 170, 340? People can come to different decisions on these two parameters. I think the important thing is acknowledging to yourself and even to everybody else whether you're voting that way, whether you feel that way for your own economic self-interest or for the decentralization of blockchain. And I'm a capitalist. I understand the economic self-interest thing. In fact, I think it's healthy in any system that has economic parameters. I think it's healthy for people to look out for their own economic self-interest. But I think this is one of those things where, for my personal feeling, is the long-term strategy that is best for everyone economically is the same one that leads to the most decentralization. I think a lot of the economic value of blockchain ecosystems is in the decentralization. In fact, I think that's the most important thing. I think the most important thing for the value of a blockchain ecosystem is the decentralization. So while I might disagree with some other people who actually think that they're voting in favor of in favor of their own economic self-interest, I would argue that their long-term economic self-interest is actually aligned with the decentralization thing. Of course, some people are going to disagree with me there, and they're just going to vote for whatever they think is best in the short term. And you can kind of tell that by the way the stake pools voted. So you can find this dashboard, which it has been constantly updating all day, and I'm sure will be constantly updating, throughout this whole poll event. You can find this in the text version of the Cardano Rumor Rundown, which will be published on Reddit, which will be linked in the description box below, and also on Twitter. But if you go down below here, below these little bar graphs, you can see exactly how the pools are voting. And it's a very nice little chart here. You can filter it even by answer. It'll group them by answer. So it's kind of interesting. You can see at every level. You can expand this chart to get all of them, because as of right now, you can see this is the extent of the pools that have voted. So right now, 70 pools have voted, which is not bad for day one. We've got seven days and change left, so a lot more pools are going to vote. This is not bad for day one. So you can see here is the vote that I personally think is probably the one that promotes the most decentralization. Move K to 1,000. Which means we can have more fully saturated pools. This means that we're trying to accommodate 1,000 fully saturated pools, which of course will mean we have way more than that, because right now we're at K equals 500, which means we're trying to accommodate 500 fully saturated pools, and we've got almost 3,000 pools. So I'm like, great, let's move to K equals 1,000. Then you've got min cost of 170 ADA per epoch. We've talked about this before on the channel, but a min cost fee of a substantial min cost fee of 340 ADA per epoch promotes multi-pooling. So think about this. If you've got, say, 45 million in a stake pool like the Army of Spies pool currently has, then that's as of the time I record this, then you could take that 45 million single pool, divide it up into, say, 4 pools of 10 million, and 1 pool of 5 million. And instead of collecting this 340 ADA per epoch fee once every epoch, you could collect it 5 times per epoch. That would be substantially more money. You'd make way more money in these min pool cost fees than by being a single pool operator. Obviously, we don't do that because we think it's bad for decentralization. And interestingly, we do have a very good example of a multi-pool operator voting K equals 1,000, min cost equals 170. That's Digital Fortress, the pool of Rick McCracken. He's voting for decentralization here. And I believe he's even pledged that if K goes to 1,000, he's not going to split his pools. Thank you very much for that, Rick. I believe that was a vote for decentralization, and I think everyone appreciates it. But if we scroll up here, we see a lot more votes for decentralization here. In my opinion, you might have a different opinion about, what's going to promote decentralization best, but in my opinion, these are good votes for decentralization. And then we get up here and we see a multi-pool operator with how many pools? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, according to this, voting K equals 1,000, min cost 340. They don't want to change the min cost fee. Why is that? Well, if we go over to this column, you can see, of course, they're collecting at least the min fee in, looks like, all of their pools. But I also see some other numbers, some higher numbers. Not only they're collecting 340, it looks like here's a pool where they're collecting 400. Here's a pool where they're collecting 400 and another pool where they're collecting 500. So no surprise to me, at least, that they don't want to change that 340 min fee. They want to collect it. In fact, it looks like they want to collect even more than that. So I think we're going to see more of this. There will be a lot of multi-pool operators who definitely want to continue collecting that 340 ADA fee. And of course, there's going to be a redelegation period. So if you don't agree with the way your stake pool is voting, you can redelegate, and that'll end up in the snapshot. That's your way to vote. Here's a multi-pool. Looks like I've only 2 pools voting K equals 500, cost equals 170. And then we have another big multi-pool operator. I believe there's 8 pools here. Let's see if I can count them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I believe there's actually an 8th. I think I'm miscounting somehow. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, okay. I believe there's 8. And they don't want any changes at all. They want K equals 500, min cost 340 ADA. So no surprise, a multi-pool operator of 8 pools doesn't want to change anything. They're like, hey, things are good now. I don't want to change this. Of course, no surprise there. But what is kind of funny, when you come up here and you look, how many pools are actually voting in favor of change nothing? There's only 11 pools voting to change nothing out of 69. Out of 69 pools, actually, I think, if I refresh, I believe we've actually got 70 who have voted now. 71 now. Okay, 71 have voted now. And only 11 have voted to keep things the same. And 8 of them are that multi-pool operator. So it's just that one multi-pool operator and 3 other pools out of 71 who are voting not to change anything. When it comes to this choice of charting a new course, of adjusting your strategy in the face of new evidence, or just digging yourself into a deeper hole, it looks like today Ledger is choosing to just dig a deeper hole. Okay, maybe it's not something they chose. It's just that more facts are coming out and the hole seems to be getting deeper. And I don't think we dug the hole. I think Ledger dug the hole. So here's this thread. So this started out earlier. This was when the Ledger Recover thing was coming out. Ledger Recovers are upcoming an optional service for users who want to secure backup of their secret recovery phrase. You guys all know all about that. So of course, Smaug of Pool PM fame asked the important question here. Smaug said, it unfortunately still does not explain where does the symmetric shard encryption key come from and how a new device can later use it to decrypt the shard. So this is exactly what we talked about in the video yesterday, in the Cardano rumor rundown yesterday. So obviously the FAQ says you can use a brand new Ledger Nano X to recover your private key from the 3 encrypted shards that are being held by the 3 custodians if you enroll in this Ledger Recover thing. So if you can use a new device, that means that you're not decrypting those shards with any private key from your old device, because you're not using your old device. You're using a brand new device, which isn't going to know about a private key that just sat on the secure element in your old key. So Smaug is asking the right question here. And Charles Guillemet came back today and gave this response. We'll give a detailed explanation of this soon, but in short, the seed is sharded in 3 using Shamir secret sharing. These shards are encrypted a first time using a master key contained in all devices. What? There's a master key contained in all devices? What is he talking about? Are you kidding me? Like, are we talking about one master key? So a lot of people, started asking the question, does Ledger know this master key, or do you seed it and the hardware provides an unknown salt for its generation? And of course, it seems to me that can't possibly be the case, because if any any salting or anything like that came out of the original hardware device, how would the new hardware device be able to decrypt that? The same problem up here. This is just another iteration of the same problem. So it's kind of looking like it looks like they're saying all of the Ledger devices contain this one master key that decrypts the shards. Does that sound like the best possible security to anybody? It looks like Smaug had the same interpretation of all this. He said, "Thank you for answering. So the master key used to decrypt shards is the same in all devices. Not sure why it was said differently by your CEO." And certainly, if we go to this post by the CEO that was yesterday, again, it was Smaug asking the same question, making the same point. So Pascal Gauthier, who's the CEO of Ledger, had posted this. "It's not an option. Seed never leaves the device, only encrypted shards." This is Crypto 101. Smaug said, "Encrypted shards can be decrypted on a new device, which means the encryption keys are the same in all devices, aren't they?" And he posts the same FAQ that I showed in that video yesterday. Do I need a new Ledger Nano X to recover access to my wallet? Using a new device makes the process as safe as possible. You see that they're encouraging you to use a new Ledger Nano X. So we know that new Ledger Nano X must have some means to decrypt these encrypted shards, which means it's not using any private key from your old ledger, from your original ledger. So this is problematic. So Pascal Gauthier said, "Of course not. It means only you can trigger the recovery process from any other device. It's an additional security feature in case you've decided not to keep your seed phrase and you lose your device." So it seems that he's saying something completely opposite. So Smaug asked, which means the encryption keys are the same in all devices, aren't they? And Pascal Gauthier said, "Of course not." But then if we go back here, look at what the CTO said. "These shards are encrypted a first time using a master key contained in all devices." So the best interpretation, man, maybe there's some technical nuance they're trying to communicate that's not coming across very well on Twitter. But as of right now, I'm kind of with this guy. Wow, they cannot even get their own story straight. So I think there probably is some kind of miscommunication here. I'm guessing that neither one of these parties is trying to deceive anyone or anything like that. I think they're probably using different terminology to describe things, but the CTO is definitely saying a master key contained in all devices. While when asked basically the same question, the CEO said, "Of course not. It means only you can trigger the recovery process from any other device." So his "of course not" seems to be directly in response to that question. It's the same master key on all the devices. So this is getting more and more confusing. The hole keeps getting dug deeper. The question yesterday was, where is this master key that decrypts the shards? That was the big question. Today, we're getting contrary answers. The CEO is saying, no, it's not the same master key on all the devices. The CTO is saying it's a master key contained in all devices. So the hole keeps getting deeper. The hole keeps getting dug deeper, and we don't really have answers to the most important questions. Where is the master key that decrypts those shards? The answer to that question, very hazy right now. Finally, Kopi Cafe is back this week, and Rob and Josh brought us some brand new in-game footage from Solace in Cornucopias. I guess this is one of what apparently will be many different Solace regions. If you look at this in-game footage, there are some beautiful color palettes here, beautiful textures. I think Solace is definitely going to be a very aesthetically pleasing place. And it looks like a lot of effort. Has been put into the production of the environment that will kind of be the setting for whatever gameplay happens in Cornucopias. Look at those beautiful rays of sunlight coming through those trees. They also had a very interesting discussion about how AI is probably going to massively change the production of virtual worlds and games like this. I think we're kind of leaving this era when giant human teams will be producing a lot of the content of these games sort of by hand. Of course, we had procedural generation of things in games for a while now, but I think AI is going to massively change how games like this are produced. So it's kind of very interesting to see a game like this that was launched in sort of the pre-AI era. And now, here in 2023, we find ourselves very much in the era of GPT-4 and Midjourney. So it'll be interesting to see the evolution of Cornucopias. And of course, I always say on any of these metaverse projects, any one of them could fail. We don't know what they're going to produce. The timelines for these projects, many of which are very ambitious, the timelines are probably very long. It's going to be a while before we see what sort of the final products are going to look like for some of these games. Not that they'll ever really be done. I'm sure some of them will just be, continuing to develop for a long time, but the timelines just to get to something that starts looking like a finished product are pretty long. And we don't know which of these projects are going to fail. We don't know which ones are going to end up delivering something that'll be satisfying to the communities. We just don't know. But based on what I'm seeing here, this gameplay footage of Solace looks very beautiful. So I'm very much looking forward to the future installments of Kobe Cafe when Rob and Josh will show us more gameplay footage like this. I'm hoping it's just as beautiful as all of this. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.